All right. All right. And there we go. Okay, so it looks like we are live and good to go. So I want to introduce Dr. Russ Barnes from Sistro Solutions. He is the chief strategist there. And let me just tell you guys, after talking with this man for quite a bit, probably 3 or 4 times at this point, I admire this man very much. Very smart guy. And Dr. Barnes, let me let you go ahead and talk a little bit about what you do and why you're here.
So let me give you a little background on how I got where I am,
Yeah.
and then that will give you some context, at least the listeners, some context for why I do what I do and how I approach what I do. So I grew up in New York, and I'm one of eight. I'm the third, and I have two brothers who are 5 and 6 years older than me, and then my next brother is 3 and 4 years younger. So that put me in
Hmm.
a category where I was the baby for a while. I was sort of an only kid there in the middle of this large family for a while, and then I was the oldest for a while. So I get
Right.
to understand how all those dynamics work, and that led me into the leadership opportunities and the framework that I had on leadership. Because
Hmm.
my older brothers, they put it on me, and I didn't want to put it on my little brothers, and so
Right.
just took a different approach to making sure that I took care of them. But as I went through life, then that perspective put me in a situation where I always felt like I wanted to take care of people and make people better. And so after a 27-year career in the military, retired as a colonel, no six, so I had that senior leadership experience going in there. I knew that I wanted to be on my own. I wanted to not work for anybody ever again because I wanted that decision making ability, and I wanted to be able to control my own ability to earn.
Hmm.
Uh, and I wanted to be able to fulfill my vision and make my decisions and act on my decisions. And I knew I wouldn't be able to do that if I were within a corporate environment. I also knew that going down the business path was going to be equally as challenging as going down a corporate
Sure.
employment path. And so I was really choosing which one of two difficult paths I wanted to go on. And the entrepreneurial one gave me more autonomy and more authority over my future. So I said,
Hmm.
if I'm going to put in this type of work and effort, I'm going to put it into something that I think will give me more opportunity to control my own future. And that's what I
Hmm.
did. So I knew one thing when I retired from the military in 2009, and that was that I was going to be an entrepreneur, one way or the other. And it
Gotcha.
was, I just mentioned it was 2009, and we all know what was going on in 2009.
That's
Very
right.
bad time for the economy.
That's right.
And I do my due diligence. I do my homework. I studied a lot of businesses, so I understood what the challenges were. And I realized through my research that several very successful businesses started during a recession. And so my
That's right.
philosophy
That's
was,
right.
hey, if I can build a company and make it successful during these times, then when times get good, I'm going to be really in a good situation in terms of my business. And I knew it was going to take a lot of learning to get to where I needed to be as well.
Hmm.
So when I retired, I didn't know what my value was. I
Gotcha.
had no idea what my product or my service was going to be. And I made an assumption that because I'd been in the military for 27 years, that I would go down that path of government contracting.
Yeah.
So I did my due diligence in that area. I took a course, business to government, and after I did that, and I paid a few $1,000s for that course.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I did that, I realized I'm not ready. I said, if I
Gotcha.
try to jump into that pool, I'm going to sink really fast. And of course, I didn't want to put what I had already built for my family in jeopardy because I
Yeah.
wanted to take this risk. So I went into a franchise. I purchased a franchise company territory. It was out of Canada, and I'm in Florida, and they
Hmm.
had no presence in Florida yet. So I was basically a startup, and I got to experience all of the pain and all of the stress and all of the struggle of being a
Yeah.
startup. There was no customer base that I started with. There was
Oh,
no brand recognition in the community. So I had to build all that up from scratch. And that was a very um, eye-opening experience.
Okay.
Very, very, very
Yeah.
challenging, for me. I have you look at Myers-Briggs, I'm on
Yeah.
the introverted side of that
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
And so I'm more introspective and I think more deeply. And that's my reasons for risk control, making sure that I'm not
Definitely.
overstepping my risk um, characteristics, what I'm comfortable
Gotcha.
with.
Let,
So
let, let me
yeah.
Well, here, let me ask you a quick question about that now,
Sure.
because one of the things that I always want to address, even now when we're talking about someone who's a business strategist, someone who's working with small businesses, someone who is obviously accomplished, in the last 11 or so years in this business. One of the things that I'm always looking for is if you think back, and you kind of talked a little bit about the personality traits. What do you think made you say? uh, this is something I can jump on. Now, I mean, because I get it to a certain point. You say, hey, I don't want to work for someone else. But what do you think makes you say, hey, I can do this. I can take this leap of faith.
You don't, well, you don't. Yeah, you really don't. It comes from whatever drives you internally. So the drive for me was autonomy. The drive for me was independence. The drive for me was freedom. And those things were so important to me that when I looked at my options, I
Mm,
said, the option of going corporate is
yeah,
not going to satisfy my need for freedom, autonomy, and decision making. And my wife and I had a lot of conversations about this because her
yeah,
thing was, we've been traveling around for 27 years. She was with me my entire military career.
yeah, yeah,
And, we've moved and we've done all these things. We've sacrificed money
yeah, yeah,
for the military career. And she said, here's your opportunity to make a lot of money, to go get a corporate job, making, $200,000, $300,000 or whatever. Some of my peers, of course, at the O6 level were finding those types of opportunities.
right.
I said, well, if you get into a job where they're paying you that much money, they are going to have high expectations for what you
True.
deliver. So
Yeah,
you're not going to be home. I said, if I get a job, like I will not be home. You will not see me.
yeah,
So that was not the lifestyle that I was looking for. And so for me, it started with the lifestyle and then saying, okay, if I want that, I am willing to pay the price for
sure.
that. And that's when I just decided, hey, I'm going to leap in. It doesn't matter how hard it is. I
Yeah.
don't know that I can do it. I have no idea what this path is going to look like. But the one thing I was clear on was that it has something to do with being an entrepreneur.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, I obviously like we spoken a bit about your past, and I get to the privilege of looking at your bio and seeing all your information. Can you tell our audience a bit about what you've done in the past? What leadership qualities or skills or things that you've done in the past that maybe help you to be such a good planner, first off, and then to maybe have some of the outlooks that you have on being able to work a job like this or start an entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with when I retired, and then I'm going to back it up.
Okay.
When I retired, and I said I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I had no idea what that was going to look like. Um, I bought the franchise territory because I said I need to be in business. The
Hmm.
advice I was getting from people was go work for a company, learn
Sure.
how to do business, and then you can branch off from there into your own business.
Hmm.
But I didn't have any idea of what business I would even go into,
Hmm.
branch off from. And the type of personality that I have is if I'm working for you, I'm working for you.
Hmm.
I'm not trying to work for you and figure out how am I going to then
Get
leverage
yours.
it
Yeah.
to get my own. And so I knew that wouldn't work for me. So the franchise enabled me to be in business, and I wanted to do that so that I would be around business people in
Yeah.
the community of business people, and through that way find out where my personal value was, where my personal strengths were, and what type of a product and service I could offer to the community. And that is exactly what happened. There came a point where my business, the business I purchased was leather restoration and vinyl repair. So
Gotcha.
it was a mobile business because that's how much money I had. I could afford to get into that franchise without going into debt. So that was part of that risk management approach. And but it was such a disconnect because here I am, a retired colonel, and now I'm kind of fixing people's stuff, doing
Yep.
repair.
Yep.
A very, very challenging situation for my wife as well. And most people didn't get it. They didn't understand. What do you know about leather restoration? What do you know about vinyl repair? What do you know about, this hands-on stuff?
Yeah.
And what they missed was that I was the CEO of my own company, and I was sort
Yeah.
of in this sort of master's level program to learn how to be a business owner. So
Gotcha.
I got into the environment of business. I'm around business owners. I'm seeing their struggles. But after about 2.5 years, I was just really sick and tired of doing repairs.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of good lessons came out of that. But then I started saying, okay, I'm ready to transition out of this. What am I going to do? What did I learn? And I had studied businesses, as I mentioned before. I noticed that there was this 20-year incubation period before companies would hit that hockey stick effect. And
Yeah.
I said, well, I don't have 20 years to incubate. So what have I been doing for 15 years, at least 15 years, that I could leverage? And
Interesting.
so this is where I kind of go back. So I went back and looked at, well, what did I do as a child? What kind of things was I interested in? Where was my focus? And I remember that people always talked to me about being organized. And I always had checklists since I was like 7 years old. And I had a paper
Gotcha.
roll, and I had shoveling snow and raking leaves and doing all these things to make money. I was always very organized. I was always a reader.
Mm,
I was reading 2 or 3 books at a time at all
mm-hmm.
times. And so when I started to look back at that, and then I looked at how I sort of programmed my
Mm-hmm.
progress through my military career. And then I looked at the jobs I had in the military, and 75% of the jobs I had when I was on active duty had something to do with strategy and planning.
Mm,
And I realized that those were the things that I love, and those were the things that I was able to leverage, and those are the things that made me successful. And I did something several years ago. I've been on LinkedIn since 2009. And at
mm-hmm.
one point, I sent a request to a large number of people that I'd served with on active duty. And I
Mm-hmm.
asked them to write me a recommendation. And I said, write whatever you want. And the majority of them came back and they did say, I was such a strong strategy person. And that surprised me, but I learned something about how other people saw me.
Yeah.
So when I got that to that point, I said, okay, then the next thing I do has to have something to do with strategy and organization because those are my superpowers. That's where I come from. As I was in the business environment, I saw business owners who were intelligent, hardworking, dedicated, committed, but they weren't generating the type of revenue that they wanted to generate, and they weren't living the type of lifestyle that they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to live when they
Yeah.
went into this thing. So I said, why is that? And I just became so incredibly curious about that,
Mm-hmm.
especially when there are free services, free support, there are coaches, there are consultants, there are all these people out there who can provide help. I didn't understand why that condition still existed.
Mm-hmm.
And it just became almost an obsession for me to figure that piece out. And so now I had the two pieces. I had the pieces that I needed. I had the strategy development piece that I was interested in. I had the organization development piece that I was interested in. And I had the community of people I wanted to help. And
Mm.
that's what gave me the meaningfulness and also the profit potential to be able to go down that path. So that kind of gets back to the question you asked me, which was how did I know that I could succeed? And once I had those three pieces, then all of a sudden the game was changed. It wasn't
I,
about the money. It wasn't about the success, so to speak. It was about
mm.
I have to help people in the community, and I have a way to do that profitably. And the more profit I make, the more people I can help.
I got to tell you, I think that's a beautiful thing. One, it's after working with a bunch of people who were entrepreneurs who were starting businesses. I would have been thrilled to work with you, man. And the fact that you had so much kind of understanding about even where to look for some of this information. Most people, when they're trying to find what they want to start a business in, everyone's looking in the same place. Everyone's like, well, what's popular, what's trending, what makes the money. So I got to congratulate you first off for the fact that you're able to say right up front, hey, this is what I want to do. I know about this 20-year incubation period. I know that there's a thing that I feel I can do. I think that's awesome that you took a look back. So
Mhm.
You started off in this sort of introspective way. Um, which part do you think what do you have personally do you think is like the defining factor, the reason that well, you know what, before I even go all into it, let me have you go more into what you're doing right now, so
Mhm.
then that way we can kind of go back based on what you're doing right now.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really good segue into that
Yeah.
because so I started out saying, how can I help these small business owners? And I began to just talk to the ones who were having the struggles that I was
Yeah.
noticing. And I said, okay, let me try this. And it's just, just not even pro bono work. I didn't even have anything at the time. I said, let's just figure out how I can help you, or
Hmm.
if I have anything that I can do to help you. And I actually did that for about a year, just, and I was in an organization called Business Networking International, BNI.
Hmm. Hmm.
And within BNI, I saw some of those folks who I admired so much with their dedication to building their own company and not giving up, refusal to quit. They're going to
Hmm.
make the thing work. And that's where I was able to find the people that I just wanted to help and could help. And the first few things I tried didn't help. And so,
Gotcha.
you know, because the people I was working with were very honest with me and they were very candid, which was great. Because I said, okay, now we've worked through these things and we've worked on these things. What do you think about that? They go, oh, well, I could have done that for myself. I go, okay.
Okay. Okay.
And so I realized that that wasn't the value. That wasn't where the value was. Eventually, I realized that um, the big companies were succeeding because of organization design and organization development. So I said, well, let me take some of what they're working on and then apply it to small business. And I
Yeah.
learned it didn't work because the challenges that big business are facing
Yeah.
are completely different than you as a solopreneur is facing. And so I couldn't just translate it or apply it.
Right.
I said,
Right.
okay, then I'm going to have to create something new.
Yep.
And that's what took me into the PhD program to learn more about organization development. So my PhD is in organization development, and my dissertation is organization design for small business, a discovery of business fundamentals for executing a purposeful path to profitability. So what I realized was that there's this space where you have a business model, you're making a little bit of money, it's not enough to grow,
Hmm.
you're not in a situation where you can take advantage of what the free services offer or what
Hmm.
a coaching consultant might help you with.
Hmm.
So there's this space that I call the pre-profitability space.
Hmm.
And so I had focused my efforts on this pre-profitability space. And then so now how do we create a revenue strategy so
Right.
that you can generate a controllable stream of revenue against which you can budget and then give yourself choices and options for future growth.
Well,
In,
so
in, my,
so
in my PhD, let me just say this
oh,
last
go ahead.
one.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
In my PhD, I studied 75 businesses that had started at zero and grew to 100 million in annual revenue or above. And I
Hmm.
focused on that pre-profitability stage to see what every single one of them did in that stage. And that's what I use as the foundation and the framework for Sistro, along with 4 different models that I created during my PhD program. So that's what I do.
Uh, first off, that is amazing. I want to make sure we break down some of these concepts, though.
Yes.
So, for anyone who isn't, I know there are a couple of people who I spoke to on Facebook. I told them to tune in so that they can really try to get some of this information. So, how do you know? What are the guidelines for when you're in that pre-profitability mode? What are they looking at to know that they're those kind of businesses you're talking about?
So the easiest way for me to characterize that was, if you're in a business and you're generating less than 100,000 in annual revenue, then that's you're likely in that pre-profitability stage, because
Okay.
that's you have your revenue coming in, you have your expenses, and if your expenses are high, then
Sure.
you can't survive. And oh, by the way, you can't take that entire $100,000 that you're generating through your business and live on it.
Right.
You at the best might be able to get 20, 25,000 out of it if you're really good to live
Mm,
on. And that's just not enough. That's
Right.
painful. It's just very painful. I originally started focusing on 50,000 in annual revenue or less because I saw a lot of those businesses. So that's how I characterize initially someone who is in that pre-profitability stage.
Okay.
The truth is, though, you could be generating $5 million in annual revenue and still be in a pre-profitability stage.
Mm,
And I've seen businesses that are like that. And I've worked with a couple of businesses that are in the $700,000, $800,000 range, and they're
hmm.
pretty profitable. They don't have stable revenue streams. And
Gotcha.
so,
Gotcha.
so while that's my initial going in, and if you as a business owner are in that situation, then we can definitely have a conversation.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Now, let me also take you to the term you use, purposely profitable. Um, um, I'm sorry, I'm missing a P program.
Mhm.
So, can you give me a little bit of an idea of what that is, what that means, and maybe how you came up with that?
Yeah, because I would hear business owners say all the time, you just have to throw something against the wall and see what sticks. And it was
Mm,
all about trial and error. And it was luck and, you know,
chance and
yeah,
hoping and
right, hope and luck and all these terms that made it sound like as a business owner, you have no control.
yeah,
And coming from a military environment where we had responsibility for national security
yeah,
and we didn't have the latitude to get it wrong,
yeah,
and it was one of the most uncertain and ambiguous environments that you could possibly find yourself in. But we didn't proceed as though we had no control.
yeah,
We looked at the situation and the circumstances. We made some assumptions. We created some parameters within which we could operate. We knew what our skill sets were. We
sure,
knew what the opposition looked like, and we, to the best of our ability, we looked at what their capabilities were, and we approach this thing from a strategic and then an operational and then a tactical perspective. So I said,
sure,
well, why don't we do that in business? And the
yeah,
truth is, we do at the higher levels. At the
yeah,
corporate levels, they do that. But when you're a solopreneur and you have not had the experience of being a
yeah,
strategist, working with strategy, understanding how to create a strategy, you can't apply it.
that's right.
So that piece right there is where I wanted to focus. So in the Purposefully Profitable program, we focus on, it's all about intention, and is what you're doing leading you from where you are to where you want to be. So the first thing we do is we look at, well, where do you want to be?
Yeah,
And you would be absolutely surprised at how many business owners have not thought about what they want this business to look like in the end state. And they'll
hmm,
tell you, well, I have no idea. I can't even begin to figure out what it looks like in the end state.
yep,
And they're right, but I can. I can help you with that. And
yeah,
so I created some tools, some templates, some worksheets that you can work through that help you identify what it will look like. And yes, it will be an artificial construct to begin with,
hmm,
but as you work from where you are and you start walking that path, then you get more clarity.
yeah.
When I started, I only knew one thing. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't need to know any more than that because from that point, I could say, I want to be
Start
an
walking.
entrepreneur. I'm not one now. Start figuring out what is an
Yeah,
entrepreneur, what does that person do, how do they function, and those are some of the things that I thought, well, why has no one thought of this before?
yep, yep. Uh,
So,
uh,
mhm,
Well, here, now I'll tell you what I specifically find interesting about that is in what led me to coaching was a very similar sort of aha moment. I'm helping people to get these businesses started, and I was also doing like resume writing and doing social profiles on the internet, that sort of thing. And I'm helping people get these jobs with these corporate giants and the big four accounting firms, things like that. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, this is the end. People should be happy with where they are. And I found so many times that people had no real idea where they really wanted to go. And a lot of it was what you said, intention.
right,
They what they really knew was that this is a prestigious place, or
That's right.
And this is the salary that this position makes. And what really got me into this idea of coaching is people don't really understand why they're going where they're going.
Hmm.
So I find that to be so fascinating that what you're basically doing is filling this huge gap of
Hmm.
information because my granddad owned a restaurant. He owned a restaurant because he was a great cook, had no idea about business, lost his business, you know. I'm assuming that in your research is showing you that a lot of people are going through something similar. How so from your point of view, and you probably have a much better viewpoint of this than I do. How widespread is that sort of thinking in business, especially with our smaller businesses?
uh, Man, I tell you, just to put my experience on the line, it's like 90%.
Okay.
The
Okay.
majority of business owners that I meet and have conversations with, um, they're struggling, and they'll tell me, I know what I do, and I know
Hmm.
how I serve people, and I know what I can deliver, and I know how I can help, but this business side is just killing
Yeah.
me. I
Yeah.
don't know if my decisions are the right decisions. I
Yep.
don't know if I should be working on X, Y, or Z. I don't know, um, what's more important in terms of making sure that I get my admin stuff or my marketing stuff, or do I
Yep.
do sales before I hire someone, or
Yep.
how can I hire someone, or where can I get enough money to keep going?
Yep.
All of these questions on the business side are just creating a tremendous amount of overwhelm and uncertainty and anxiety. And at a certain point, it just drains your energy,
Yep.
and it makes it very difficult, because now you're not concentrating on what you do best and why you went into business to begin with.
Right.
You
Right.
just don't have the time. I also had the good fortune when I started out. I went and took all the courses with the Small Business Administration.
Hmm.
And then one of the first courses I took, a gentleman came in. He said, I've already been in business. It was how to start a small business was the name of the course. And he
Hmm.
said, well, I've already been in business and I just came for a refresher. But he said, if anyone hasn't read the E Myth Revisited, he said, I highly recommend that you read that book.
Yeah.
And I immediately went out, I got it, and I read it, and it talked about that idea of intention, knowing which hats you're wearing, um, which ones you do best, and so that you can, at some point down the line, determine how you bring in people to assist you and in what sequence.
Hmm.
And that really established the foundation for me with my franchise business, as well as with the things that I'm doing, moving along the road now.
First off, let me just say thanks for bringing that up. The book, the E Myths book. I was just with Emily Harmon,
Yeah.
on her podcast, and she honestly, the podcast just aired. I want to say yesterday, and she recommended that exact same book. So,
Yeah.
guys, I got to tell you, for anyone in the audience paying attention to this, you definitely want to grab this book. We have two people, very smart people. I'm going to tell you, recommending this. So maybe we can add that to the notes after this show. Um, so okay, so we're talking about the purposely profitable program. Can you give me an idea? Let's say it's me because I am a struggling business.
Yeah.
I'm undercapitalized like most everyone else. How does it work from day one? What am I looking at?
So what you're looking at from day one is you have to make sure that you have a clear understanding of both the money side and the meaningfulness side. So how much money do you want your business to generate for you?
Right.
And again, it's you. It's up to you. And I'm going to say this very briefly. With Sistro Solutions, the goal is for you to be in control, because what I've learned is that people don't want to be told what to do. And when somebody sits down and
Yeah.
says, if you do A, B, C, D, and E, then you'll be successful. And then they try to hold you accountable for doing A, B, C, D, and E. You're going to be like, well, that's not why I went into business. I went into business for freedom. And now I've just got a job because I'm working for you, because you're
Yeah.
telling me what to do. And people rebel against that. Not maybe not rebel. Rebel is a strong word, but they resist that. It
Yeah.
just doesn't
Yeah.
fit well. So when we sit down and say, how much money do you want?
Yeah.
Now you are in control. And some people just wanted six figures. Some people want, a few million. But whatever that is, you decided and you
Yeah.
set. Then the next thing you do is say, well, why am I actually doing this business? And now you put
Hmm.
in that meaningfulness part of it. I do my business because I want to help struggling business owners become uh, profitable and successful financially because that changes lives. That's a passion for me. When things get hard, I don't have a real problem powering my way through because I have meaningfulness as
Yeah.
well as money. So
Yeah.
money without meaning is unfulfilling, and then meaning without money is unsustainable. So you have to have
Mm.
both. So that's where we start, and we just kind of work together and we co-create what that's going to look like, and then we go back and say, okay, where are you now? What things have you already done? And I do that with a little assessment. And so now we're both on the same page in terms of what you've already done. So we don't have to revisit the things that you've already done. We start with
Hmm.
where you are, again, because nobody wants to be going back and having to listen to things they already know. So
Right.
let's work on that. And then we just connect the dots and we look at, so once we look at how much money you want, we can kind of break that down and say, okay, if that's how much money you want, then we can divide that by months.
Hmm.
So let's take $100,000. If you want $100,000 in revenue, then we can break that down and say, okay, that's $84,000 a month that you need.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
about $21,000 a week, and that probably is what, about $5,000 a day. So what do I do, and what can I do, and what am I really good at that I can offer to a community um, for which they would be willing to pay me, this amount of
Right.
money.
Right.
And so then the next piece of that then becomes the problem. People will pay for a solution to a painful problem.
That's
And the
right.
more painful and urgent the problem is, the sooner they'll pull the trigger to
Yeah.
go ahead and pay. And if they believe that you have the solution to their painful problem, then it becomes a win-win situation. So that's how it begins. That's how we begin to co-create. That's how we begin to frame it. And then we map that out. So now we've
Hmm.
got all the components, we put them on a milestone map, and now you can visualize how to get
Mm.
from A to Z. And then what happens is the people that I'm working with say, you know what? I feel so much lighter now.
Yeah.
I This is doable because I don't have to try to get now from A to Z. All I have to do is get from A to B, and then I go
Hmm.
from B to C, and then I go from C to D, and nothing else changes. You're still going to face obstacles.
Right.
COVID stuff is still going to
Yeah.
happen. Things out of your control are still going to happen. But now your creativity kicks in. And this is where the magic happens, is because people are most happy when they are most creative. And
That's right.
so in going from A to B, you're putting all your creativity with a focus on something that is going to be measurable for you in your progression. And so, take me for an example. I decided that I needed to create a portal because I wanted to have a low price point because I'm working with business owners who don't have money, and
Hmm.
I wanted to be able to have a broad reach. If I'm
Yeah.
going to help, I set my goal at 600,000 micro business owners. If I'm going to have that kind of reach, it has to be automated because I
That's right.
can't coach my way to
Right. For
600,000
everybody. Yep.
successful people. So that became my desired outcome.
Hmm.
But in order to get there, I had to have the tools. I had to have the philosophies. I had to have, the components of
Yeah.
that would go into that portal, and I had to prove them. So I started out doing presentations, and I come up with a model. I get in front of a group. I give a presentation. I get some feedback. I always had a feedback sheet.
Hmm.
Um, so I started with these several presentations. One was called "How to Organize Your Business for Profitable Growth,"
Makes sense.
and
Yeah.
right, right in my alley, right in my sweet spot, getting feedback from.
Hmm.
So there was the presentation, and then there was the book, and then there was the podcast, and then there was the PhD, and then there
Yeah.
was the, now I'm really starting to work on the portal. I'm
Gotcha.
getting conversations with people who can help me put that tech enabled
Sure.
piece to my company, but I'm building that with having all of these other pieces already in place. So I felt very confident and very comfortable working on those things one at a time because I knew I was progressing.
So now let me ask you this. We talked, I want to say a week or two ago, and you
Mhm.
were giving me example of someone that was going through the program,
Mhm.
and I want to use this kind of as a point of kind of understanding how involved you are. Because I
Right.
know you said, the goal is 600,000 micro businesses, and you can't, you need some automation, some of that. But now
Yes.
you're telling me a story about someone who was in the program and you saw that they were starting a community online. Can
Mhm.
can can you tell me about that? As far as like your involvement with some of the clients.
Yes. When we begin to co-create, certain things begin to pop out.
Hmm.
They emerge. As you're being creative, certain things emerge. And with this particular client, it became clear that the creativity was there, the personality was there, the product was there, and the best way to move forward was to build a community or to be
Right.
part of a community, because
Right.
when you create a community of people who value what you deliver,
Hmm.
then you begin to leverage that ability. So when you put out if you've got a community of 5,000 people or 10,000 people, and you have a mug, you market a mug, or you put together a mug.
Hmm.
10% of those people or 15% of those people purchase that mug because they like you, because they want to
Yeah.
support you. Now you have a revenue stream that is effective. And
Hmm.
so even as I look at the individual clients, I also look at the environment around in which we live. And I have been noticing that this trend toward community has been growing for at least a couple of years. And
Hmm.
I've watched people become very successful with building community
Hmm.
around the problem that they solve.
Hmm.
And that's just such a powerful thing. I'm going to mention a good friend, Chris Kremitzos with Podfest, and he's been a master at building a community. And he started out with the Florida Podcasters Association. And his first conference, there were 13 people.
Hmm.
And then he doubled that, and then he doubled it again, and he doubled it again. And last year, as a matter of fact, not last year, but in March when he had Podfest, there were nearly 2,000 people there. And
Wow.
then when he did Podfest Virtual, which was a global summit aimed at setting a Guinness Book of World Record
Right.
for the most podcasters attending a virtual event, there were over 5,000 people who participated in that. And now you just imagine if he says, okay, and this is actually happening. He says, okay, I'm gonna write a book. He wrote a book called Start Ugly. And when he put the Start Ugly book, out there on Amazon, it sold out within hours.
Yeah.
The first run
Yeah.
sold out within hours. Why? Because he had a community of people who knew what type of value he had, who knew what type of quality he would put together, knew what type of person he was from being able to care about people.
Right.
So when I work with my client and I look and see, you know what, you have a product and you have a personality and you have a capability to build a community,
Hmm.
then let's get started on doing that. And that becomes the desired outcome. And
Hmm.
now it then becomes a matter of, are you going to build a community on Facebook? Are you going to build it on LinkedIn? Are you going to build it on YouTube? Are you going to build it on Instagram? Which one fits the product or service that you are actually bringing to the community? And the other great thing is that now people in the community are engaged with you, and they're
Yeah.
telling you whether or not you are meeting their needs.
Yeah.
And so now you can go back and revise your offerings to make sure you're solving their painful,
Yeah.
urgent problems. And it
Based on
really
that
works well.
feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So community and being a celebrity in your community is just one path that we can explore based upon what you want as your desired outcome. It
Well,
doesn't necessarily work for everybody, but
gotcha.
yeah.
Well, now let me it made me think of it. You speaking of community, but I want to take a little bit of a left turn here. One of
Mhm.
the things that I know that's happening is that in the Black community, we have
Yeah.
plenty of entrepreneurs, we have plenty of people who are looking to be a part of this American dream, who are looking to be. I mean, you and I both know that the small business money is like the engine that turns the American economy. So the more the better. But
Exactly.
but there is a case where there doesn't seem to be the same access to business credit, the same access to things like well, capital.
Hmm.
So I know that you're probably working and probably getting a lot of requests from people from the African American community to say, "Hey, we need help." Can you speak to some of that?
Yes. The studies, the Small Business Administration studies show that small businesses fail because they're undercapitalized and because they lack the management skills that they need in order to run a small business. So when you take a look at it from that perspective, then it is a real problem. And so, how do you get that capital? And
Hmm.
here's the challenge. Here's the challenge. Banks won't lend you money.
Hmm.
Don't think you have the ability to pay.
Right.
So it's risk. There's a risk factor associated with that. If a banker gives a loan or gives a series of loans, and more than 1 to 2% of those loans don't get paid back, that
Hmm.
person could lose their job.
Right.
That's how important it is to the banks to make
Wow.
sure they're getting their money back. So when you look at that as the basic premise, then you have to look at, in that case, what is the criteria that a banker is going to use to approve a loan? And you have the basic criteria.
Mm.
As a business owner, how much collateral do you have? What type of collateral do you have?
Hmm.
How much revenue are you generating? All the bank wants to know is, if I give you this loan, are you going to have the ability to pay it back?
Right.
Those are tangible measurables, but most small business owners don't generally meet the criteria in those tangible ways,
Hmm.
because if they did, they wouldn't be coming to the bank for a loan.
Right.
And that's why people will say, you have to go get a loan or open and establish a line of credit when you don't need it.
Yeah.
Because when you do need it, you're not going to be qualified for
That's
it and
right.
you're not going to get it. So, using that as the basic premise, now we get into the subjective criteria. And
Yeah.
when you start looking at subjective criteria, you can say, this individual is an African American, and I just don't know if they're going to be able to survive in this
Sure.
environment, in this economy. I don't know if white people are going to buy from them. I
Hmm.
don't know if there are enough black people for them to sell to
Sure.
that's going to make their business survive. And these type of um, questions have to be answered.
Yeah.
And so when you start looking at the rate of loan approvals in the black community versus the white community,
Yep.
there's a huge differentiation. And one of my favorite people, particularly lately, is Robert Smith.
Hmm.
He's the billionaire who paid off the loans for that entire Morehouse College class.
Yep.
And he's been in the financial industry for years. And he just recently did a study on how many of the black businesses were receiving PPP loans as
Hmm.
opposed to the rest of the population,
Hmm.
and huge disparity, huge disparity.
Yeah.
When you look at the trajectory of our ability to build businesses and be involved in the business community, it's a very short period of time, because prior to even the last 40 years, we had been excluded by the system. The system excluded us because
Hmm.
one of the movies that I just watched very recently is called The Banker, and it's a great movie. But it's about a black guy who was really intelligent when it came to real estate and all those kind of things. But as a black person, he was not allowed to purchase. So he
Right.
actually ended up having a white guy front for him so that he
Hmm.
could make these purchases. But then other things happened. But it's a great movie. But um, but until recently, we didn't. So we don't have that track record or experience of
Sure.
being able to navigate the most significant waters, and so that goes into that those calculations.
Yeah.
Sometimes we don't even know where to ask. We don't know what to ask. We don't know how to ask.
Yep.
And so what Robert Smith is doing is he's looking at that and saying, we need to bring this side of our economy up to speed,
Hmm.
because as black people we are no less capable, qualified to build incredible
Sure.
businesses. So we've done
Yep.
it. So we have to try to change that dynamic through performance, as we always have. Every dynamic we've changed through performance,
Hmm.
and we just have to be able to do that. But the undercapitalization is a problem. The undercapitalization is a problem for women. It's a problem for African Americans. It's a problem for for the that group.
Hmm.
My sister is in a situation right now where, she had this lease to buy option on the business that she's building, and she has 4 or 5 months left before that lease expires, and she's trying to raise capital so that she can purchase that building before the lease expires at the end of the year.
Hmm.
And she's having a nightmare.
Yeah.
I'm helping her as much as I can, but the dynamics of the community is causing her to really struggle. So as a black woman, she's got sort of the double whammy there, but we're
Yeah.
trying to work our way through that. And her business is thriving. She's been increasing revenue every year for the past 3 years, and she's got the tax returns to prove it. But we
Right.
just have to figure it out. But the capitalization piece, you are absolutely right, and we have just got to figure it out. And I like what Robert Smith is doing. If you
Yeah.
want to go out, and if anybody wants to go out and research him, just Google his name and his company. You'll see what he's talking about, and it makes complete sense, complete
Yeah.
economic sense, in terms of how he would like to see black-owned businesses
Sure. Sure.
to be able to be capitalized so they can get the type of growth that they need.
I, I I personally would like to see a lot of this happen. If nothing else, based on the fact the last time I looked at the numbers, African American money was about the eighth richest nation in the world. I think I want to say 2015. That
Hmm.
was the last time I saw those numbers. Either way, it does make the point that there's black money out there.
Hmm.
So there is a case. There is a case to be made about African American businesses, and
Hmm.
that being a larger part of economic growth, not just outside of the black community, but inside of the community too.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
So
so
I
so
want to definitely say this too.
yeah,
Historically, you go back and you look at Greenwood, Black Wall Street. They were circulating the dollar like 100 times before it even left the community.
mm,
So these types of communities have been built. I was reading about some other communities that were, uh, you know, very financially thriving communities
right,
even before the Civil War. Black
yeah,
communities that were thriving financially before the Civil War. So we do have that that track record,
yeah,
but having to deal with and fight through some of the policies, segregation and
yeah,
and all those types of things. Having to fight that really uh, it distracts you from
yeah,
what you could do if you were
yeah,
able to just merely focus on being good.
yeah,
We
yeah.
just don't have the latitude to merely focus on being good. There are so many other obstacles that we have to deal with. Um,
Yeah, and obviously that's there's a lot to be worked on as far as that conversation goes too.
mhm,
The one of the last pieces I really want to make sure I touch on with you. Um, what what this show is about understanding people who are moving forward.
mhm,
So, and even when we talk about the Black or African American experience, it's about not getting stuck with where we have been. Us obviously as Black males, Black people in general, we don't want to get stuck. But this is about every group. So I've talked to people who've been abused. I've talked to people who have PTSD. I've talked everyone as in human beings in general. We were talking about moving forward. So
mhm,
that being said, when you being in this space, you have a really good viewpoint from starting your own business and then working with small businesses. What do you say is the first step? Because I'm always interested in what's the thing you can do today? What's the thing you can do on your next day to
mhm,
start getting yourself prepared to have a thriving business?
mhm.
What's the first thing people should be doing?
They need to look into themselves and see what they're good at. Everyone was born with a talent. What is your talent? And we tend to overlook our talent because it seems so easy. It seems like
Right.
anybody can do it. It seems like it doesn't have any value.
Yep.
But what you need to do is take a look at that thing that you do so well. For me,
Hmm.
I was fortunate, but to be honest, I didn't realize what it was until I was over 50 years old.
Right.
So with my sons, I tried to help them identify it before they were 10. That
Yeah.
was one of my goals. I said, I want them to understand what their strengths are before they're 10 years old. That was my goal.
Yep.
And because once you identify what you were born with as a
Hmm.
talent, you can then see who doesn't want to do that. How many?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people out there who want nothing to do with strategy and organization. They just it's a weak spot for them. It's a painful spot for them.
Yeah.
So they're happy for me to come in and help them with that.
Yep. Yep.
So once you see what you do so well, you then look for people who don't do that well, and you see if there are problems they're struggling with in which you can help
Hmm.
doing what you do best. If you can do that, then so many other things become less challenging, less daunting, because when you wake up every day, you have confidence and self
Yep.
esteem and
Yep.
belief and courage to take on some of those things that just seem like they're impossible to fix. You're challenged by that. It's not a problem. It may be an obstacle, but you're challenged. So if you can work on that piece first. And you can do that through assessments. I love taking assessments like the
Yep.
Myers-Briggs, the DISC, the Core Map, the Herman
Yep.
Brain,
Yep.
all of these different assessments to know who you are, what you're good at. Those
Yep.
assessments I would take and I would look at them and say, okay, that I agree with. That one doesn't quite strike me as who
Hmm.
I really am, but it gave me the language to also be able to express.
Gotcha.
So that's where it has to start, and we don't look at that too much. We're not taught that in school. Like you said earlier, the goal for us growing up is, okay, what is the most lucrative career to go into? Okay, I have to be a doctor. I have to be an engineer. I have to be an attorney. I have to do something that makes a lot of money. Right now, it's like cybersecurity. Everybody wants to jump into cybersecurity because there's a lot of
Hmm.
jobs that make a lot of money. But you may not be well suited for that type
Yep.
of business or profession. So you kind of have to look internal first. Then you connect your talent to a problem in society that you can fix. And because you are now be playing while everybody else is working, because you'll be putting in hours at your leisure,
Hmm. Hmm.
you will be the best at what you do. And nobody wants to hire the second best. How many times have you ever heard anybody say, "Hey, tell me who the second best coach is, so I can go hire them because the first best, you
That's right.
know."
That's right.
Tell me who the best is. If you have a really serious problem, I want to know who the best. And so I know that I can take strategy and development, and I can be the best in the world at it because I love it, because it's fun,
And it's
because
what
it's
you
interesting,
believe
because
in. Yeah.
I believe in it. And now I just have to find the problems that I can solve, and then put together your pricing packages and programs. So you have to start internal. You have to find out who you are, and
Yeah.
then from there you can move forward. But that's the first step. That's the absolute first step.
I got to tell you, I love so much listening to you talk about this because there's such a systematic approach, and that is for me personally. I'm an assessment guy. I've
Mhm.
taken them for years, and what I found is that for me personally, I'm a strategic person. Like things have to line up logically for me. So going off of my gut feeling and that sort of thing, not quite as good for me. So when
Mhm.
I hear you talk about this, man, it makes so much sense, and it lines up with this idea of things that you can purposefully control. So we
Mhm.
can't control you can't control your economic background. You can't control what race, what city. You can't control any of these things we start off with, but we can definitely control uh our level of understanding of what it is we're good at, what we do,
Mhm.
and then how to leverage that. And you give such a good example of that with your own life and with the advice you just gave. So I want to thank you so much for that, my brother. That is beautiful stuff.
Yeah, my
Uh,
pleasure. Let me throw one other thing in there,
yeah,
because you and I are both strategic thinkers, and there are some people out there who go, "Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful." I'm not going to look in and figure out what I'm good at. I just need to make some money, and I just want
Yeah.
to have a business, and I just want to do these things. So there is a perspective for that as well. And the perspective I offer for somebody who just doesn't want to go through that process and says, look, I just want to have a business, then there is nothing wrong with picking and saying, okay, I'm going into cybersecurity. But you still, my recommendation would still be to say, okay, if you're going into cybersecurity, then you need to set some parameters. I'm going to do this for 7 years. And within that 7 years, I want to make this amount of money. And you set those as your goal. And then you drive towards those. So now while you're in that environment, you're pushing, you're overcoming obstacles, you're learning, you're growing. You may hate it, but you
Hmm.
know that at the end of it, you're going to have that financial security that you were striving for. The
Hmm.
hope is that you don't get stuck. You don't get, kind of get stuck in there where you're not making the amount of money that you thought you wanted to make. And now you're kind of spinning your wheels.
Yep.
But if you set that target, now it becomes purposeful and it's still intentional and
That's
you
right.
can still kind of map it out, even if you
That's
don't
right.
write it down. I recommend everybody write all this stuff
Write
down.
it down. Write it
But
down.
even if you don't write it down, you can say, okay, my goal is in 10 years, I want to have, $1.5 million in the bank.
Hmm.
And I'm going to
Hmm.
do it through cybersecurity because that's where the most money is coming from. I'm going to do
Yep.
it through real estate because that's where I can, make
Yep.
that kind of money. I'm going to do it through. It still makes you intentional without really having to say, okay, I have to do all this
Yeah.
introspection stuff that I don't want to do. There's another option.
Yep. Yep. I, man, again, 100% agree. I've had so many people I've worked with who we're talking about things like, oh yeah, well, I'd like to go into this or that. I'd like to, you may be a doctor, but your love, your joy may come from uh planting flowers. You know, and that is 100% okay, but you're probably not going to make the same money planting flowers. That being said, you need a plan. You need a
Mhm,
plan, and that's where you and I are totally aligned. I love the idea of it doesn't necessarily matter if you don't want to be introspective. It doesn't necessarily matter if you don't understand or want to understand what your goals are going to be for 20 years from now. You need a plan for as much as you can, and kind of like you mentioned earlier, as you're walking, the clarity comes.
that's right.
um, I want to make sure we mention, well, I want to have you mention whichever ways you can be contacted because it looks like we're coming up to the end here.
Yeah.
So, how can people get in touch with you, and who are you looking for to get in touch with
So the first way is my email, russ@sistro.org, RUSS at SYSTRO.org.
you? Hmm.
The second way is LinkedIn. And, you can find me on LinkedIn and I use my rank there. So it's Colonel Retired Dr. Russ Barnes on
That's right.
LinkedIn. And you can find me there. I'm always on LinkedIn. I respond there. So those are the two primary ways. And then once we get that, then I can give you other ways to set appointments and get on the telephone and get on a Zoom call or those sorts of things. But those are the two primary ways.
All right. All right. Anything else you want to leave our audience with, Dr. Russ?
I love having strategy and organization conversations. So if you're in that situation where you would just like to have a conversation, like we just said, hit me up on LinkedIn or send me an email, and I would be happy to have that conversation anytime.
All right. I want to thank you again for your time, sir. You are a great guest, man. The time flew by because of how
Mhm.
interesting this stuff is that that you're talking about. Guys, you can always reach out to me. Same thing on LinkedIn. I'm Kelly Blackman, your favorite coach's favorite coach.
There we go.
You can also you can also go to my website if you want to discuss any of this stuff. One of the things that Dr. Russ mentioned was the fact about being introspective. If you don't know how to do that, get in touch with a coach. I'm a coach. You can reach me right at my website. It's www.bethinklive.com, and you can fill out a contact form or you can schedule an appointment right on the site. Guys, I love you guys for tuning in. Everyone who was here for us, Dr. Russ, I'm going to play us out with my cheesy outro, and you hang on for just a moment. I'm going to talk to you backstage.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
It
Ta-da! Good night, everybody.